Hello, I'm Greg, EG.IdrA Fields, and this is a replay review brought to you by evilgeniuses.net. Today I'll be looking at me versus MVP Tails in a game on Antiga Shipyard on the North American ladder. Here we have me as the red Zerg in the bottom left versus Tails as the blue Protoss in the bottom right. This is the ladder version of Antiga, so you are allowed close spawns. This makes it much more difficult for the Zerg, as Protoss can simply warp into this area from a pylon on his high ground. Void Rays also have very quick access to your third base. It makes it very uncomfortable to play. The tournament version of the map is cross positions only. However, this does have the gold base, so if I manage to secure a gold base, that massive mineral income really helps me out. Mineral income not too important for the Protoss. By the time he has access to this base, Zealots are not very powerful units, and they're obviously Protoss's only mineral-heavy unit. So that gold base does help me out, but much more importantly, these positions are going to be very difficult to deal with. However, in knowing that, it gives me a little bit of an advantage. I know that this is such a powerful position for Protoss that it's almost a guarantee that he's going to focus on it and try and take advantage of it. So we'll actually see that I go for a much more defensive build than usual. I get my gases very quickly and kind of mass up roachling on a much lower drone count than you normally would, as I know that this is so tempting that he's going to have to try and take advantage of it, especially given that he's often a very aggressive player. I opened up with a normal 15 pool, 16 hatchery. I managed to get that 16 hatchery down before his probe scout got in, so that's a nice little advantage. This is about the best opening you can hope for as ZvP, especially given that he's putting down this cannon before he actually puts down his nexus, which is pretty unnecessary, honestly. Something very important for all Protoss players. Most do, but some don't. You don't need to put down that cannon that early. You can put down the gateway first, then put down the cannon. If Zerg makes 6 lings, which you'll see as you have your probe scout in here, then you can just go ahead and pull a couple of probes or put down an additional building in order to wall it off. Getting down that nexus as quickly as possible is so incredibly important. It's a massive economic lead. It makes Zerg much more comfortable. And additionally, getting that gateway very quickly. You can get out a couple of Zealots and a Stalker for harass, or you can just get your warp grade much quicker. So something Protosses really need to pay a lot more attention to, at least some of them, is being as efficient and greedy as possible with that early game opening. Just going ahead and putting down that cannon first like he did delayed his nexus so much. My hatchery is already done for quite a while. My third hatchery is on the way before his nexus even finishes, and that's just absolutely unnecessary by him. He knew exactly what was happening. He knew he didn't have to get that cannon. For the meantime, just droning up. Like I said, I will be going for gases much quicker than normal. Kind of the standard opening right now is the Stefano style, double gas on 44, 46, Broach Warren around 54, maybe a little bit earlier, and then just go up to 70 supply off of drones and queens only. That, in theory, can hold everything, except for incredibly greedy into incredibly aggressive openings like Inori did to him at MLG. However, it can be pretty iffy in close positions like this versus very aggressive players like Tails. There are some weaknesses to the build. It can be very difficult to hold off certain aggression. So I will instead be going for a much faster Broach Warren, I believe. Actually, I'm already at 42 supply, so I guess I'm not going that fast. But a faster Broach Warren and also Zergling speed before Lair, which is pretty big, as the Zergling speed allows you to chase down and surround sentries and stalkers if they're not going for a blink build. If they're going for very fast aggression, then the Zergling speed is very useful. However, if they're going for delayed aggression, then you want to go Lair with your first 100 gas, as that gives you Broach speed immediately, which is much more valuable versus the later game aggression. For the meantime, just droning up. The general premise of ZvP is to get as many drones as you possibly can before you have to get as many roaches as you possibly can to hold off the 2-base all-in. Stefano, like I said, his style is pretty much the go-to ZvP right now. He has a very good understanding of the matchup, and his understanding of it is actually very simplistic. He's just figured out how many drones he can possibly get away with in the early game, which is essentially up to 70 supply off of purely drones plus 4 queens. And then you watch and see if he takes a third base. And if he doesn't take a third base, you just keep making pure roaches with a round of about 10 drones in after the initial potential aggression. There are several stages of Protoss attacks. First, they can have one where they just get +1 weapons and like 4 or 5 gate zealots. And once he's held that off, then he makes another round of about 10 drones or so. And then he'll go back into roach aggression until he sees, or into roach production, until he sees a third nexus. And if he doesn't see a third nexus, he just keeps making roaches. And then he'll eventually crush whatever you move out with pure roaches. So that's kind of what we're going for in ZvP right now. I'm just watching for his attack to come out, and then I'm going to kill it with a bunch of roaches. We also see speedling on the way, like I said, before lair. That is the deviation here. Generally, you'll want to go lair with your first 100 gas and then speedling with your second 100. Like I said, I knew this is a great position for him to attack from. I knew Tails is a really aggressive player, so I'm going speedling first and producing a bunch of extra surgeons. Also, I did not go up to 70 supply of drones. I believe I stopped around 60 or so. So, slightly lower drone count in order to be able to actually crush this aggression. Nice little tactic by him, putting a probe here in order to warp in on the high ground. Very annoying and difficult to deal with, as you really can't afford to split up your army too much in situations like this as the Zerg. Here, you can see the power of the speedlings in a second here. Just going to go ahead and go in and surround the sentries, get a bunch of extra sentry kills. My roaches obviously destroy the zealots. And here, had I not gotten speedlings, I wouldn't have been able to trap those and run those down, wouldn't have gotten those 2 sentry kills. So he would have just gotten away, saved the sentries, which is very important. As is, held that off very easily. And I know I've secured myself, so I make around 10 drones to catch up with the economic disadvantage I put myself at early on in holding that off so easily. Here, taking advantage of that pylon, very, very annoying. As I said, going to warp in a few zealots and go in and do some damage. However, I have more than enough units to hold it off. I saw it coming because of this overlord placement, so I have my roaches on the way back. He's going to go in and poke again. However, more than enough units to deal with it. He doesn't have a ton of gateways because he was so aggressive early on. Just doesn't have many units at all. And here the attack coming in. Using these queens to wall off, that's sometimes, in this situation, it was good because I'm so far ahead that I just have to hold off the attack as efficiently as possible. However, obviously queens are very, very important, and killing them is a pretty big blow to your economy. So they're good tanks, but it's often not worth it. That was just a tactic I used there because I was worried about dying to this, and I knew that if I didn't die to it, I would be in a commanding lead of the game because I have so much higher drone count than his probe count. So that was a little bit iffy, but it worked out well. It held off everything. I'm now on 3 bases with a pretty solid economy. He doesn't have a 3rd nexus on the way. He's now trying to establish himself. He's getting that upgrade, getting his tech buildings. But his initial aggression failed. He lost a lot of sentries early on, which is a ton of gas. So he's now in a really uncomfortable position. And at this point, I reestablished my economy. I'm getting a couple more drones. I know that I'm safe because I've held that off. I have roach speed on the way. Roaches are very, very efficient versus unupgraded, unteched Protoss armies like this. So I know that gives me the opportunity to get these drones up. And that's just kind of a general principle of Zerg. You're trying to get out as many drones as you possibly can without dying, always. That's pretty much the most important, most basic part of Zerg play. So I know that he's not going to be able to kill me for a while, so I make a bunch of drones. And once I've made a bunch of drones, then I switch to pure unit production. Zerg economy and Zerg production works best if you're focusing on something. If you're not trying to make a handful of drones while making a handful of units. You want to go in bursts, make a bunch of drones up until the very last possible moment, and then make pure units. And at this point, this is kind of the danger to Stefano's way of dealing with ZvP. If you only scout for the 3rd nexus, if you don't scout for tech, something really risky like double robo immortal can be very good for you. Immortal's obviously so incredibly efficient versus roaches that it can kind of compensate for that early game disadvantage he took. However, had I just gone mutas, had I scouted this and gone mutas, I would have absolutely destroyed him. I know something's up, so I go in and I scout the double robo immortal. And my response to that is going to be the Hydra Warren. I saw it too late. Had I gone muta here, had I put down a Spire, he might have been able to attack before that would kick in and do damage to me. Hydra Warren is a safer option. So I'm going to go ahead and use that as my response. Hydra Warren, not nearly as good in general, though. If he just sits back and plays defensively and goes double Robo Colossus, that can be pretty dangerous. However, we see here he's going to go ahead and move out and try and take that 3rd base, so that's going to give me an opportunity. If you do go Hydra ZvP, even if you just stay on Roach's ZvP, you pretty much have to be aggressive. They are not good units to have in the late game. Hydras are so cost-efficiently countered by Templar and Colossus that you just don't want to have them in your army. And Roaches, once you get towards the late game, they're very cost-efficient, but very supply-inefficient. So once you get towards a 200-200 army, you can't make any more units, then it's very, very bad to have Roaches in your army. They just take up way more supply than they're worth. However, he is taking that 3rd nexus, so he's giving me the opportunity to attack. That's a bad decision by him. Had he been scouting better, had he realized that I was going for Hydras without much of an economy. I don't have full saturation on this base. I don't have my 6th gas. Had he realized that, he could have just sat back and got 2 Colossus behind this wall, been completely invulnerable, and then had those two Colossus, which pretty much nullify these Zerglings and these Hydras. Instead, he's moving out and trying to take third base because he doesn't really think while he plays, and so I'm able to go in for this three-way surround. The Zerglings trap his army up against my Roach Hydra. It prevents him from moving back and getting away from these units. Doesn't really take advantage of the force fields too much. Obviously, it blocks off these Roaches, but the majority of my army was hitting him, was doing damage. Taking out these Sentries. Sentries and Immortals are the big deal here. Once those are gone, the Stalkers will just fall very, very quickly to the Roach Hydra. So taking out the high priority units here. As soon as I realize that I'm not gonna be able to do much more damage, I pull back and I wait for my reinforcements. I had a much better economy than him, as I had that third base up and he didn't. So I'm able to resupply very quickly. Also have very good creep spread coming, knowing that I'll be able to come in and surround him. He tries to pull back, but he doesn't get back in time. The speed of the creep spread allows me to get in here, kill a bunch of extra sentries, take down one of his Immortals, and force him back. So that worked out very, very well for me. That's kind of the way you're supposed to play Roach Hydra. I went in here, I got a good surround, but I lost anyway because Roach Hydra is a very inefficient unit combination. However, it's also very cheap and easy to resupply. So I got in here, and even though I was going to lose the battle, I killed a lot of his very important units, and then I was able to make a lot more stuff than he could very quickly and win the second battle. And just kind of take advantage of how cheap my units are and how much better my economy was. Here, getting in, surrounding again. Again, a multi-prong attack. Multi-prong attacks, very, very important, just as a general principle of RTS. However, much, much more so with Roach Hydra is Roaches, you need a big surface area with them. Force fields make it very difficult to actually engage, plus they're short range. So surrounding, very, very important, as I did there. And Tails, GG's. So this was a replay review brought to you by evilgeniuses.net. Check us out for more great content there. Thank you for watching.